She almost got away with it. Tonight we're hearing how police tracked down a jealous lover in connection to a Maryland man's murder. And now that woman is facing some serious prison time.
Doreen, they described this as an execution. First she had sex with him and then she shot him in the head. And she could have gotten away with it, except for one thing.
He was found dead in his own bed, shot in the head at close range. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle, and the front door was still locked from the inside. To those who knew him, Eric Somuah was quiet, generous, and deeply private. But as investigators peeled back the layers of his life, they uncovered a web of romantic betrayal, hidden secrets, and a deadly obsession. What began as a mysterious slaying quickly spiraled into one of the most shocking revelations in the state of Maryland. This was no robbery gone wrong. This was personal. Eric Somuah's slaying left detectives puzzled and his loved ones shattered. But as questions mounted, one name kept surfacing. Katrina Benn, the heartbroken ex-girlfriend who claimed to know nothing.
No one, we don't know, we don't have mutual friends. I don't really know anybody here. But people knew me when they saw me in the hall because of him, you know. But, yeah, there were several people.
What investigators would soon uncover, from a discarded weapon on the side of the highway to a tangled trail of pawnshop records, would expose a calculated plot fueled by jealousy and a betrayal no one saw coming. Eric Somuah was born on August 1, 1977, the youngest of 4 children born to immigrant parents from Ghana who had come to the United States in search of better opportunities. Growing up in a Ghanaian-American household, Eric was raised with a deep respect for hard work and ambition. He held tightly to the promise of the American dream, determined to build a life of success and fulfillment. That determination eventually led him to settle in Maryland, where by early 2012 he had become a high-earning luxury car salesman. At just 34 years old, Eric was thriving professionally and financially, earning between $10,000 and $20,000 in monthly commission at a prestigious Jaguar and Range Rover dealership in Bethesda. Eric's outward lifestyle reflected his rising status. He lived in a stylish, upscale apartment in Silver Spring, Maryland, just outside the heart of Washington, D.C., and carried himself with the kind of confidence that came from hard-earned success. His good looks and magnetic personality made him popular, particularly among women who were drawn to his charm and accomplishments. Though he enjoyed the attention, his relationships were typically casual and short-lived. Beneath his confident exterior, however, was a personal life that was far less controlled than his professional one. One particular romantic entanglement was growing increasingly unstable, and it was about to change everything. Living in the same Silver Spring apartment complex was Katrina Benn, a traveling nurse originally from Silver Creek, Mississippi. While many details about her early life and education were not publicly known, it was clear she had completed the necessary training to work as a registered oncology nurse. Katrina's career had her constantly on the move, taking on short-term contracts through a medical staffing agency. She relocated frequently, often every few months, and eventually found herself in Maryland, where she became neighbors with Eric Somuah. During the spring of 2012, Katrina and Eric developed a romantic relationship. It began casually, sparked by proximity and shared interests. They spent time together watching basketball and enjoying each other's company, their bond growing quickly but lacking long-term stability. Although their romance appeared low-key from the outside, it was marked by emotional intensity behind closed doors. Katrina, who was a single mother, reportedly grew increasingly distressed when she discovered that Eric was also seeing other women. The feelings of jealousy and betrayal began to take hold, slowly corroding the casual dynamic they once shared. To many, Eric appeared to have everything under control. He had reached the peak of his profession, maintained a polished appearance, and enjoyed a lifestyle that few could match. Katrina, too, seemed to be managing her career and personal responsibilities with strength. But beneath the surface, tension between the two had been growing, simmering just below the surface. Their relationship, once filled with easy laughter and shared evenings, had taken on a darker tone. The emotional weight of unspoken expectations and wounded pride was beginning to push both individuals to a breaking point. Then came the night of June 6th, 2012. What should have been another quiet evening in their apartment complex instead became the setting for a devastating and irreversible act. Everything that had been brewing beneath the surface, the jealousy, the hurt, the betrayal, exploded into a moment that no one could have predicted. What happened that night would leave a permanent scar on everyone connected to the story and mark the beginning of a tragic unraveling that no one saw coming. By June 6, 2012, alarm bells were ringing. Eric had not shown up to work for 2 consecutive days, and for someone as punctual and professional as him, this was entirely out of character. His absence had not gone unnoticed. Both his manager and his family grew increasingly uneasy. That evening, their concerns prompted law enforcement officers to perform a welfare check at his Silver Spring apartment. What they found was both shocking and deeply unsettling. Eric was lying lifeless in his bed. At first glance, it appeared to be a self-inflicted act. But there was one glaring inconsistency. No firearm was found anywhere in the room. The case was quickly handed over to Montgomery County Police Detective Dimitri Reuven. Young but highly regarded, Reuven approached the scene with sharp intuition and a keen eye for detail. The moment he stepped into the apartment, he sensed deception. The staging was too neat, too controlled. To Reuven, this was no suicide. It was an intentional act of violence masked to look like one. Someone had taken deliberate steps to create a false narrative, and he was determined to uncover who and why. Reuven began his investigation by turning to those closest to the victim. Eric came from a large, loving family, and the detective methodically interviewed them to rule out any potential involvement. His 2 sisters and older brother were quickly cleared, but they offered valuable insight into Eric's life. They described him as sociable, successful, and charismatic, a man who worked hard, lived well, and enjoyed the company of many women. They mentioned his frequent visits to a nearby bar, where he was known for being the center of attention and often left in the company of a new romantic interest. Following up on those details, Reuven spoke with a bartender at Eric's usual hangout. The staff confirmed Eric's reputation as a confident ladies' man who rarely spent the night alone after a visit. But what troubled Reuven was not just Eric's social habits. It was the condition in which his body had been found. Eric had been shot while tucked in bed, a scene that implied trust and vulnerability. There was no sign of forced entry or a struggle. The evidence strongly suggested that whoever committed the act had been welcomed into the apartment, someone Eric knew well. Eric's family then brought up a woman named Denise Harrington, a girlfriend he had been seeing for about a year. There was a significant age gap, nearly 2 decades, which had made her unpopular among his relatives. Denise also had access to Eric's apartment, holding a key that gave her entry at any time. Her name immediately caught Reuven's attention. Given her connection to Eric and her possible motive, anger over his romantic involvement with other women, she became a person of interest. However, that promising lead quickly lost momentum. Reuven obtained Denise's phone records and verified her whereabouts for the night Eric was killed. The data confirmed she had been at home during the time of the slaying. With no physical evidence tying her to the crime scene, the detective was forced to let the suspicion go. Yet, the core of the case remained painfully clear. Eric's death was not random, nor was it a self-inflicted tragedy. Someone close to him had staged a scene to hide their guilt, and Reuven knew he was only beginning to unravel the truth. The investigation took a new direction when a neighbor casually mentioned that Eric had been involved with a woman named Katrina. This revelation prompted detectives to reach out to Katrina Ben, who confirmed during questioning that she and Eric had recently begun a romantic relationship. She explained that their connection started a few weeks earlier when Eric approached her outside their apartment building and asked if she was a nurse. She was indeed employed with the National Institutes of Health, and their conversation quickly turned playful. What began as harmless flirtation soon evolved into a budding romance. The two would often meet on Monday nights, bonding over their shared love for basketball games. During her interview with investigators, Katrina came across as emotionally shaken.
How'd you meet up? I met Eric outside, like 2 weeks after I had been there. I think we get off work or get in about the same time. So I usually get off around 6. It takes me a while to get home. And we were walking in, and he asked me if I was a nurse. And we just stood outside and chatted maybe 30 minutes because he was starting some kind of agency, nursing agency, kind of like what I work for. So I'm a basketball fan, and so is he. So that was our connection. A game was coming on that night, and he was like, we can watch it. He asked if I wanted to go to his place, and I was like, well, we can do upstairs at 15th floor.
She told Detective Reuven that she had been struggling since Eric's death, overwhelmed by sadness and confusion. She appeared genuinely distraught, stating that she had been crying frequently and was desperate for closure. She even asked the detective if Eric had made any phone calls shortly before his death and wondered aloud whether she might have been the last person he contacted. Her emotional investment was further underscored when she attended Eric's funeral, taking a seat in the second row. But as a witness who had been with him shortly before he died, detectives were limited in how much information they could share with her. What Katrina disclosed next caught investigators by surprise. On the evening of June 4th, she said Eric suddenly expressed a desire to smoke marijuana, something he had not mentioned before. She agreed, and the two left the apartment to meet a dealer. Katrina described the individual as bald, thin, and having a scruffy beard. After they returned to the apartment, the couple had sex, and Katrina eventually drifted off to sleep. But she recalled waking up sometime during the night to the sound of Eric talking to someone. She believed it might have been the same man they had met earlier, and said the conversation left her feeling uneasy. That discomfort prompted her to leave the apartment around 5:30 a.m.
He said, I did something real stupid a couple of days ago. And I was like, what? He said, I smoked some weed. Like, okay, whatever floats your boat. You know, I know people that smoke weed. I've never had any in my life. Feel free to take a blood sample, hair sample, whatever you need to do. I've never had any. I don't like to be around it. He was like, girl, please. I know somebody in the building. You know, I kind of want some. He says, it's in the building. Okay. That was that. A few minutes later, he called someone, and he asked them 2 or 3 times, where are you at? Where are you at? Where are you at?
Detectives took her account seriously and immediately began tracking down the dealer Katrina had described. The idea that someone else had entered Eric's apartment during the early morning hours, someone possibly connected to the drug world, opened the door to new possibilities. If her story was accurate, the mystery figure could have played a crucial role in Eric's death. Reuven and his team moved quickly to identify and locate the man in question, hoping to either confirm or eliminate him as a suspect. When they eventually found the alleged dealer, his response was firm. He admitted that he sold marijuana, but denied ever setting foot inside Eric's apartment. I don't deliver, he told Detective Reuven, distancing himself from the crime scene. His denial appeared credible when police reviewed building surveillance footage, which showed no sign of him entering or leaving the apartment complex. Additionally, forensic tests found no DNA, fingerprints, or other physical evidence to connect him to the location. Despite Katrina's detailed recollection and the suspicious circumstances she described, the lead ultimately went nowhere. The man she had identified could not be tied to the crime scene in any way. Investigators were once again left without a clear suspect. Still, Katrina's presence on the night of June 4th and her proximity to the victim just hours before his death placed her in a critical position in the timeline. As detectives continued their work, one fact became increasingly difficult to ignore. Katrina Ben had been the last known person to see Eric alive. Detective Reuven felt there was more to uncover in Katrina Ben's story. Though she had already been questioned, something about her earlier statements continued to raise doubts. With her now working in Baltimore, Reuven made the trip north to speak with her again, this time under heightened scrutiny. During the interview, Katrina maintained that she had never owned a firearm and had never even handled or discharged one.
Do you own a firearm?
Yes,
Okay, what kind of firearm do you own?
the 380.
Okay, why didn't you tell us that last time?
Because you never asked. I didn't kill anyone, so it's no need for me to say I have a gun. I mean, you never asked. You asked me, have you ever held a gun?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever fired a gun?
Mm-hmm.
I've been stalked, followed home, and grabbed. So the police in Jackson, Mississippi advised me to get a gun. That gun's so old, I haven't had to pull it out.
Despite her claims, Reuven's instincts told him otherwise. He believed the emotional nurse had a direct connection to Eric's slaying. Determined to uncover the truth, he traveled south to Silver Creek, Mississippi, Katrina's hometown. While in Mississippi, Reuven spoke with Katrina's father, who offered a revelation that contradicted her statements. He confirmed not only that he owned firearms, but also that his daughter had indeed fired them before. This disclosure directly opposed Katrina's earlier denial and gave the investigation renewed direction. Still, time passed with no major breakthrough. A full year had gone by since Eric's death, and the case had stalled. With limited leads, Reuven turned his attention to what could be the key to everything: the murder weapon, a .380 caliber automatic Colt pistol. Over the past year, approximately 60 guns matching that model had come into police custody in Montgomery County, either through seizures, surrenders, or investigations. Reuven began the painstaking process of checking each one. It was not until he inspected the 59th firearm that he finally caught a break. This specific .380 caliber handgun had an unusual backstory. It was discovered by a tourist who had been stuck in traffic along the D.C. Beltway near the Colesville Road exit. The gun was found lying by the roadside and turned into the police. When tested, the firearm matched the bullet casing recovered from Eric's bedroom. Digging deeper, Reuven used the gun's serial number to trace its origin. The pistol had been purchased from a pawn shop located in Columbia, Mississippi, just a few miles away from Silver Creek. What followed was a complex chain of ownership. Reuven, through persistent tracking and with help from the ATF, traced the weapon through 6 previous owners. One by one, he followed the paper trail.
We took this gun and we were here in this lab, and we took another Larson .380.
And it matched the bullet from Eric.
That's correct. We went from owner to owner to owner.
Finally, the investigation led to the last documented buyer of that firearm, Katrina Benn. With the murder weapon now linked directly to Katrina, Reuven moved swiftly. In June 2013, nearly 1 year after the killing, Katrina was arrested in Silver Creek, Mississippi. Prosecutors argued that she had the motive, opportunity, and weapon. She had been the last person to see Eric alive, had denied knowledge of firearms despite evidence to the contrary, and was believed to have acted out of jealousy after learning he was romantically involved with other women. Her defense attorney attempted to cast doubt, suggesting that an unknown man, possibly the same one she mentioned hearing in the apartment, may have been the true perpetrator. He claimed Katrina had only lied about the gun out of fear. But the pawnshop records proved otherwise. On October 22, 2014, Katrina Benn, who was 37 at the time, was found guilty in Montgomery County, Maryland, on charges of first-degree murder and a firearms violation. Several months later, on February 26, 2015, she was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole, along with an additional 20 years for the weapons offense. During sentencing, Judge David Boynton delivered a scathing statement. He described Katrina's actions as cold, calculated, devious, and said her behavior reflected someone sociopathic and detached from human life. In his view, she showed no signs of remorse or potential for rehabilitation, only a chilling disregard for the value of life. What are your thoughts about this twisted case? Share your thoughts in the comments below and give this video a thumbs up. If you are new to the channel and like this kind of content, please subscribe and hit the notification bell for upcoming episodes. Your support is greatly appreciated. Until next time, I will see you on Urban Crime Stories.